We're at the top of the hour, and let's get started. We have a few more people tuning in, but we've got a lot to fit in today. So just to formally welcome you here. So I'm Hugh Edwards. I'll be presenting along with my colleague Nic Price from eLearning. And this is the first of 4 webinars we're running. And this one is about how to move training online quickly. Just a few points here that we've been mentioning about the question panel. Please do use that to post questions, give your feedback, share your own experiences, and we'll be collating that as we go on. So let's actually now get going. Just bear with me here. Just click the right buttons. And let's just go back here. And Nic, did you want to introduce yourself as well?
I'll introduce myself quickly. So my name's Nic Price. I'm a lead learning designer at eLearning. So eLearning and Gomo Learning have a relationship. So Gomo is an authoring tool, and eLearning, we're an e-learning production company. And I've been working here for more years than I like to mention. And yeah, making very professional e-learning. So I'm really joining this to talk about the production side of e-learning and the things that we need to consider as we move training online.
Great, thanks, Nic. So we just wanted to explain a bit more about who we are and why we're talking about this subject today. So in both Leo and Gomo Learning, that we're part of the Learning Technologies group of companies. So LTG, that you see in the center here, is listed on the London Stock Exchange, and it consists of a range of wholly owned subsidiaries, each with our own specialisms in learning and learning technologies. So for example, some of the familiar names here, I'm sure you've come across Rustici Software, essentially the gatekeepers for the SCORM and XAPI standards. Watershed here with their fantastic learning analytics and learning records store. PeopleFluent with a great system, including the PeopleFluent LMS, the Net Dimensions LMS there. And also preloaded with their bringing gaming technology to learning. Their whole thing is games with purpose. And Uclea with their compliance training. And we'll be seeing some examples of their material later. So Nic sits in Leo Learning, the specialist in e-learning content creation, and I'm here in Gomo Learning, where we create the tools to help you to be able to turn your ideas into great e-learning really quickly. So together here, so we're presenting jointly, so I'll be showing the hands-on how you actually create the content, and Nic from the Leo perspective is going to be bringing his expertise to have a look at all the things you need to consider when you want to get online quickly. So Nic, shall I pass over to you for our agenda for today?
Absolutely. I'm just going to try and grab the ball from you here. And show my screen. And are we showing the right screen this time? Oh, we are. Excellent.
Yep,
okay, so this webinar we've put together really because we were contacted by quite a lot of people, and this is between Gomo and Leo, who are in a similar position because of the situation we're in, where they had planned their training to be face-to-face, and that's no longer an option. And so they're having to do in a very short length of time what we've been doing gradually for the last 20 years, which is moving learning online, which has been steadily growing for many reasons. It's often been driven because people wanted to reduce travel and attendance at face-to-face training. Or because they wanted their learning to be available at any time. So if you put together an induction course, then you want people to be able to do that when they start, not to have to wait until there's a cohort. So there have been lots of drivers for moving learning online, and we've just in the last few months come across a extremely urgent driver to move learning online. So for that reason, we're pitching this really at an audience who maybe haven't looked at putting their learning online before. So whether you're in a company which has, made some inroads online, but you were in the face-to-face team, or whether you're in an organisation that really hasn't considered online before, hopefully we're pitching it there for you. And we're going to be looking at the different ways you can deliver online. Obviously, this is a Gomo Learning webinar. We are going to be touching on Gomo Learning and e-learning, but I'm going to touch more broadly on other ways that we deliver content online as well. And yeah, if you've got more experience, I'm sure there'll be something here for you. Over the last few months, last few weeks, a few things have resonated quite well for me as people try and move very, very quickly to delivering online, including the funny meme. So we've got lots and lots of people trying to take their training, their learning online very, very quickly and reinventing wheels. And a lot of the time they're trying to do things that have been done before and have been well established. And the smart people are the people like you who decide to come and find out how people who've been doing this for a long time have approached it. I think that's definitely the wise way to approach this issue, and hopefully it'll save you a lot of frustration by being able to think this through. So I'm going to begin with some fundamentals that the fundamental building blocks of online learning are actually no different to the fundamentals of any learning solution, whether that's face-to-face or online. So hopefully none of what I'm about to say will surprise you. So one thing that we hold to be essentially true in all cases is that the drivers for doing any kind of training or learning are to meet a business objective. There's a reason that a business is doing it. And from that business objective, your performance outcome, there's something that you're wanting the people who undertake the training to do differently as a result of the training. It's always worth mentioning here that sometimes that thing that you want them to do differently is something compliant. You're doing some risk management, so it's not always a performance increase like increasing sales. Sometimes it's just everybody having the awareness to do things in a correct and compliant way, but you're still meeting a business objective of risk management. And then stemming from your performance outcome that you've identified, you have learning objectives. And that's really the core of defining a learning solution, is identifying what is the thing that I want to train on, the thing that I want to teach. And I think the reason that I decided that I wanted to reiterate this, as well as hopefully putting you in your comfort zone, because you'd be doing this for your face-to-face anyway, is to mention that possibly you need to do this with a bit more rigor than you do for face-to-face. Because if you're in a face-to-face situation, you have the opportunity to adapt and to catch up and respond to things. So if your audience turns out to be more capable than you thought, and you're taking up to next level, you can normally adapt a face-to-face training to cope with that. When you're online, you're doing a lot of planning in advance, and for that reason you need to have identified these things with a good deal of rigor, and you need to have them really clear to everybody involved in your project what it is you're trying to achieve, because that underlies then how you approach the design of your solution. And so let's look then at how training can be adapted for online delivery. Now, My wife is a teacher, and our schools have all been shut, and teachers have been tasked with the exact same challenge as many of you, which is how can you deliver your training or your teaching online? And there's almost a logical pattern that people think of when they get given that challenge initially. And one of the first places that people go is they say, well, can we just take what we were going to do face to face and do it virtually? And yes, you can take what you were going to do face to face and do it virtually, but it doesn't work entirely the same. People can't stay engaged in a virtual classroom for the length of time that you'd expect them to stay engaged in a face-to-face session. So what you might do as a day's training face-to-face is not going to translate into a day's virtual classroom. You're going to need to do a much shorter virtual classroom where people stay attentive, and then cover what you can't cover in that virtual classroom somewhere else. My next witty picture. So obviously there are schools that are taking their lessons online, delivering them by webcast, and naturally students have found a way to subvert this. And here we find that to appear to be in a virtual classroom, a student has used some of the materials available to her to just place a video of her face on a loop attending the virtual classroom. So where do we go from there? So the next most obvious thing to do is to say, well, I don't need to do a live virtual event and have everybody present at the same time, because effectively my virtual classroom is just a video of me. So why not just produce a video? It doesn't need to be, particularly specially produced. You can make nice whiteboard videos or just talking to a camera, and use that as a method. And again, this is a completely valid method to use in online teaching, but we fall into many of the same issues that the virtual classroom has as a delivery method. People don't actually have the patience to watch you speak for hours and hours. So there's going to need to be some more structure. There's going to be a neat way to break it up. Or the experience is quite passive, and people might sit in front of the video and gain very little from it. So video, again, is a good ingredient to have if you're doing online learning, but there's probably something else. And that something else we often give the name e-learning. Now, e-learning is a catch-all term which covers a very, very large range of products, if you like, which range from really quite simple things to highly bespoke things. And in my role at Leo, I spend quite a lot of time designing very bespoke experiences. I have access to developers and graphic designers and all the tools to make some quite interesting online experiences. But at the same time, a lot of what we do is a lot simpler than that. And the tool Gomo we use for an awful lot of our work because it's good. It makes a really nice job. You can work with it quickly and efficiently, and you can make content that looks good, and you can do it quite quickly. I quite like an IKEA analogy. So I have a lot of IKEA furniture in my house, and it's all fit for purpose. It looks perfectly nice and it works well. I'm not sure any of it's my favorite bits of furniture. I've got nicer pieces, including an antique piano. But I think there's a good argument that to have a lot of your furniture or your e-learning made in quite an efficient and stylish way is a good way to go. So The next question then, or our next section, is the role of e-learning in an online blend. So in our transition from face-to-face learning to online learning, this term has become really common, which is blend, where we talk about how you can use e-learning in conjunction with face-to-face training. The idea being that there's always going to be things that e-learning will do well, and there are things that a face-to-face or a live session will do well. So I'm using the term online blend because we're obviously at the moment facing this limitation that there is no face-to-face option. Everything needs to be online, but we can still make a blend, and we just need to think about the components we've got and how we're going to use them. So let's think of the three components. We've got the virtual classroom, we've got the video, and we've got e-learning. And where are they going to fit? And what do we need to consider when we're choosing which of these formats we're going to work with? Well, let's start with the virtual classroom. So virtual classroom brings a huge amount of value. I've done some amazing virtual classrooms. A couple of years ago, we did a whole series to 4 completely different areas of Africa, you know, and it enabled a conversation between learners and experts that just wouldn't have been possible in any other way. There wasn't a practical way of bringing those people together. And the doing it live enabled them to hear an authentic voice of an expert, to ask questions of somebody they wouldn't normally have access to, and just to fit it in around their day, because these were once a month, hour-long sessions, a really, really great way of delivering some training. But still relatively expensive to do. You needed the access to the experts regularly. There's quite a lot of logistics to sort out, and because of where we were going, people were still having to travel to somewhere where the internet quality was good enough to attend. So there's still a bit of logistics to work out around a virtual classroom. Also, in terms of staffing a virtual classroom, you need more people than if you're doing it face to face, and we often use 2 or 3 people to manage the virtual classroom, much like on this webinar, just to keep everything going naturally and to head off any kind of technical problems and make sure it all flows nicely together. So virtual classrooms have got a huge amount of value, and it's really nice to have them in the blend, but you can't run that many of them. You need to ration it and use it for the things that it works really, really well for. So that's worth thinking about video. And video is great because you get again, the voice of the expert. And when somebody explains something, and particularly if you can get the actual person holding the knowledge to explain it, then you capture all the nuance in the delivery of the content. And that can be really, really powerful. They can be easy to produce because you can make your video by somebody narrating their deck effectively, and you just capture that live. Or one thing that we're seeing quite a lot of now is people capturing online conversations. So, you know, they'll have a Skype call and they'll record that and they'll use that as training material, and that can be a really, really effective bit of video. But there are still some drawbacks with video. So video is, by its very nature, a passive experience. There's no breaking to ask questions, and it's quite easy for people to zone out, particularly if those videos are very long. So I think if people are watching 5-minute clips, 15-minute clips, then that can work really well. But if your video gets up to, you know, half an hour, an hour, I think there comes a point where people are not going to be absorbing the information, and a lot of content's going to get missed. And that's really the reason that we need the e-learning format. So e-learning, as I said before, is a very broad term for lots of different types of online content. There's all kinds of possibilities with e-learning for how you want to present it, which includes embedding your multimedia. So it might be that you take videos and you just break them up into the 5-minute clips, and you organize and put some structure around them so that people can access the content and they've got a bit of control around that. But then there's much more you can do. So there are authoring tools like Gomo that let you build interactive material. And then you move into delivering kind of text-based content that people can read a lot faster. So a reading speed is a lot faster than a narration speed. So people can get through that material quite a lot faster. You can use the interactions within the e-learning format to reinforce what you're saying. So for example, if you want to describe a process, you can describe it one step at a time. So we do a lot of that. We can also use interactions as questions, so you can make it feel more like a conversation than a video does. You can ask a question of the learner, they can give you their guess as to what they think their answer is. You can give them some feedback, and these are quite well-established ways that help people learn and build up their concepts, if you like. The other things that we typically build into e-learning are the assessment and the reporting. So the fact that you've got it in a format, and it's the most common format, SCORM, is well established. It's been around since before the year 2000, amazingly, and it's got built in the mechanism for sharing assessment results, and so people can take a quick quiz, and then you can gauge how well people have taken on board the content. I'd say my final benefit I'd list for the e-learning format is unlike video, e-learning is very, very easy to maintain. It's very, very easy to adapt. And the other thing we do a lot of is translation. So once you've built it in one language and you've got it right, it's reasonably easily, particularly if you're using Gomo, to get it translated into other languages. So, and I've mentioned Gomo several times now, and we're getting to the point where I'm going to hand over to Hugh. And he's going to talk to you about how we can create e-learning really quickly and easily using Gomo.
Great, thanks, Nick. I just while I set up my screen here, we've had a question from Kerry, which I thought you might like to comment on, about how do I persuade our people to run remote training when they've never done it before? Do you have any thoughts about that in the current climate?
That is it's a massive hurdle because people are always resistant to doing things that are new. There's a lot of fear involved when you've got to change to a new way of working. The situation we find ourselves in is almost a driver, that there isn't another option for them if they're not prepared to run remote training. Then what are they going to do? How are you going to achieve your goals? But I know there's a lot of resistance. My wife's a teacher, and a lot of her colleagues are deeply uncomfortable with the idea of running learning online. I think you've got to appreciate how people feel about it, but also ease them into it, give them models to follow. So if you can do a session where you train them remotely, then they can see how it's done, and they can see that everybody's kind of in the same boat, and everybody's going to make the same mistakes, and that's okay. We're in a period of time where I think making mistakes is really okay, because everybody's got to try out something new and make their way through.
Great, thanks, Nick, and thanks for the question, Kerry. So I just wanted to just have a look at some thought processes here, some things that you need to think about in moving online. Then we're going to dive in. I'm going to give you a very quick overview of the Gomo tool, so you get a sense of just how quickly you could actually be building content. So the first thing that I want you to think about is really the definitions about what are you trying to achieve? What sort of tools are going to be the best tools to be able to match your requirements? So the first thing is looking at defining your audience. So you need to think about, where are your learners based? What languages do your learners speak? If you need to deliver your learning content in multiple languages, you need to make sure from the start that you've got a tool that's going to help you with that. Also, what type of devices are your learners going to be accessing the content on? They probably in these days aren't going to be just sitting down at a desktop computer. They want to access the learning while on their tablet, sitting on the sofa in front of the TV and so forth. And what are their work patterns? And also, importantly, do your learners have special access requirements in terms of accessibility, support for things like keyboard navigation and assistive technologies like screen readers? If that's going to be crucial to your learners from the start, you need to make sure you've got a tool that's going to support you with that. Also, you need to look at where you are as a team in terms of those of you creating the content. Is it just going to be you, or do you have other colleagues who are similarly in lockdown in different locations? And how are you going to work with that? So are you going to need a cloud-based tool for that? The other thing is defining your output. So, sort of what media types do you have? I mean, do you have videos there already? Do you have maybe lots of video content out there on YouTube that you can repurpose to pull into the learning? Are you going to need to do assessments? What kind of things are you going to want to assess? And does the tool that you choose let you do that? And also then what do you need to measure? And we'll be having a look at that a bit more, both later on in this session and then I think in our fourth session as well. The other thing, have a look at what we call the learning ecosystem. So what do you already have? Do you already have a learning management system or a learning experience platform, a learning record store, and so on? What things are there ready for you to leverage? Do you have design tools? So do you have Photoshop, for example, or Adobe Premiere, say for video production? Or if you don't, do you actually happen to have a colleague who's really good at those things, who could be helping you get great looking content up and running really quickly? So have a really hard look at what you've already got, your learning ecosystem, and identify the pros and cons for that. And finally, I'd say define your partnership, because you hope that in making this move online quickly, that you're going to be gaining great experience and you're going to be doing this for a very long time. So in terms of the tools that you create, that you choose, then you need to be sure that you're happy, that the partner that you're choosing, the tool providers, are going to bring their expertise as well to help fill in any gaps that you have in expertise. They should be asking you lots of questions as well about exactly what you're trying to achieve, to make sure that you're getting the right tools to do what you need to do. So that's a bit of an overview. Let me just go in here and we'll just bear with me while I jump into Gomo. So Gomo is our cloud-based authoring tool. So you can be working as a team in distributed lockdown locations. All everyone just needs is an internet browser and an internet connection. So I happen to be on my MacBook here using Chrome. You could be on a Windows PC somewhere else using Internet Explorer or Firefox. Whatever you've got, you should be able to use with a cloud-based solution like Gomo. And also, one of the key things about the content that we're creating in Gomo is that the courses will automatically run across any desktop, any screen size, any device, any orientation. So if you're getting online quickly, this can really speed things up if the tool that you choose actually handles all of that automatically. You're not having to create a desktop version and then move everything around for a tablet version, then move everything around again for a smartphone version. Choose a tool like Gomo, which will do that for you. So that's one less thing to worry about. And here in my Gomo account, you can see that I have all of these courses, which I can then also organize either by subject area or team member or whatever it might be into these folders. But what I'm going to do now is just dive in, and we're going to create a new course just so you can see how quick and easy this is. So I'm going to click on Create a New Project. And what Gomo is going to do, it's going to be with us all the way. Here it's just asking us a few questions to get us up and running, to get us that content ready that we can then start editing and get out there to our learners. So the first thing it's asking us is about a project name. So I'll just give it the original title of demo. And the other thing here that you can see with Gomo is that I mentioned about looking at your learners and their needs. So here we can look at what languages this needs to be available in. So you can actually create one course which is then available in multiple languages. So for example, here I could say that in addition to English as the base language, I might want to deliver this, say, in Arabic, and again, check that the tool, like Gomo, has good support for right to left languages. So for example, in Gomo, it will automatically detect that it's a right to left language. It will not only right align the text, but also change the whole flow of the screen. So the screen contents read from right to left as well. So I'll say I want Arabic, and I can also say that I want to, say, deliver this in, say, Mexican Spanish. And that's going to add in these layers into my course ready for us to translate later. So I just click next. And the next thing here, again, this is all part of the speed of development. So in Gomo, the courses that you create get their whole look and feel from what we call themes, essentially style templates, which are going to control not only things like the fonts used in headings and body text and so forth, but also the look and feel of your buttons and all of the elements that you can add into a Gomo screen. And so with Gomo, you can take one of the built-in themes and just edit that to match, say, your brand colors. Or, for example, we also, for our customers with very specific brand requirements, we can work with you to customize the whole look and feel to exactly match your brand. So whichever route you take, the great thing about this style template approach is that if you've got people in different locations creating the content, they might not be graphic design experts or instructional design experts, and certainly they don't want to be sitting there with the style guidelines looking up hex color references. Instead, all everyone has to do is select the particular theme which is appropriate to your brand, and then you can be sure you're going to end up with this consistent on-brand library of e-learning courses and won't discover that somebody's used the wrong font and the wrong brand color. So I'm going to take one of the built-in themes here, and we can change all of that later. I click next. And now this is Gomo just asking us about the initial structure of our course. So here in Gomo, that a course consists of top-level building blocks, which we call topics. And these topics might be that you want to create a course to onboard new starters, to get them up and running and familiar with the company. So I might want a topic about company history, another topic about company structures, another about company policies. In Gomo, those would be topics. In turn, those topics are going to consist of a series of screens that the learner is going to work through, a bit like their own PowerPoint deck. And those can be linked together in different ways, most typically, say, through a menu, so the learner can choose where they're going to go. But if you want to do something fancier than that, you can create more sophisticated branching and dynamic branching. But the important thing here, we want to get online training up and running quickly. So I'm going to say I want an introduction, I want a menu. I'm going to say I want, say, 4 content topics to start. Again, I can go in and add more later. I want some built-in features we can have with Gomo courses. I want a help so that they can click anywhere to get help about the screen they're looking at. Glossary of terms, I don't understand a particular word, I just look up its definition. I can say resources, a useful list of, say, links to external websites and PDF documents. Accessibility, remember the whole notion of supporting people maybe with a visual impairment. A tool like Gomo has great support in terms of 508 and WCAG compliance. I'm making this multi-language, so I'm going to switch the language selector on as well. Just click next. Here we can, if we're working as a team, a distributed team, we can assign people permissions. Some people might just need to edit particular courses we're building. Other people, you just want them to review and comment, but you don't want them to be able to edit. So in a cloud-based tool like Gomo, you can assign permissions and switch them on at the course level. I'm going to click create. So what it's doing now, it's just looking at all of the decisions that we've made there in terms of the theme, the structure, the topics, the languages, and Gomo's just going to create all of that for us. So you can see here immediately that we've got the top level, like the sort of bird's eye view here of the course, where we've got a structure here. So we've got an introduction, we go into a menu, and then we have these 4 content topics hanging off the menu. We've got our special topics, help, glossary, resources, ready for us to start filling in. It's given us these elements in the navigation, the toolbars, and we can move those around. But also, in terms of getting going quickly, we can immediately here say, let's go and preview this. We know we've chosen a theme, we've chosen a structure. Let's immediately see how this hangs together before we just then dive in and just put in some of our own content. So what we've got here immediately is the whole look and feel. So we've got say a default background image. We can change that. We've got things like help ready for us to fill in. We've got a glossary of terms just waiting for us to add these terms to it. We've got our language selector ready. And in terms of language translation, with a single click in Gomo, you can just export all of the text from the course. It will be tagged with those languages we've chosen. Send it off to a translation agency if you don't want to do your own translation. They'll send it back, single click, import, translated, multiple language course ready. We've also got things like the slide out table of contents generated for us. I can move on to a menu. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we've already got the structure in place. So I haven't had to be a great graphic designer or an instructional designer to get this far. So I can preview this. I can even say, okay, at the top here, we're in desktop view. How would that look if somebody's sitting on their sofa on their tablet? What happens if I rotate it, and so on. So you can immediately begin to see the experience for your learners across multiple devices. Here on a smartphone, it automatically, it's a responsive layout, so it automatically reflows the content columns to fit into the screen, so it becomes a nice experience even on smartphone. But let's just quickly go and edit some content. I'm going to jump into one of these topics. So I'm just going to edit content topic 1. Here we go. So this is in the Gomo editor. Now, the great thing here is I can just focus on the learning content. I don't need to worry about pixel positioning on canvases because Gomo is going to take care of this working across multiple screen sizes. So I'm not having to position this 100 pixels from the top and 50 pixels from the left and exactly align it. All I do is just drop things into columns here. And also I don't have to worry about fonts and colors and so forth because that theme, the style template, will take care of that for me. So if I want to edit some existing text here, I can just simply click that, change the text, choose the style, and how this will look will depend on how that's defined in the theme. So with a single mouse click, I can switch from one theme to another and completely rebrand my content. So really easy to repurpose your content for multiple clients with multiple brands. And also here, I can say, well, I don't want a picture there. I want to add in my own content. So I can get rid of that. You can see we've got our navigation panel with our screens. And now to add things in, all I do is go to the top here. I go to the assets and I simply drag and drop here to find the elements I want. So I've got things like audio and video players. I can embed YouTube if you've got YouTube content. I've got all the basic things like text and images, but also these pre-built elements like film strips and carousels to give us sequences of images. And of course, you want to build e-learning, so you need a tool which has lots of different question types, from basic things like multiple choice to more interactive elements like drag and drop and survey style questions, and to be able to give results to the assessments, give feedback to the learner, track that score back to your learning platform. So here, if I simply want to just add in a video, all I do is just find my video player, simply drag and drop it, showing me where I can snap this in. So I'll drop that onto the right here. Now, again, to get you up and running quickly, Gomo's also pre-populating all these assets with some sample content. So if you're not sure when you're building your first course what a film strip does, just drop it in there, preview it, you can check how it works, then go in and edit it. And here, it's already added in a sample video. I don't want that, so I'm just going to double click. If I've forgotten to upload my video, I simply drag and drop that in there, click Start Upload to upload it to the cloud account. And here, I'm just going to select one that just a simple video that I just created on my iPhone. You don't have to have complex video production capabilities or expensive fancy cameras. So I just drop that in there. If I want to add in a question, I can simply add in a screen. Now, if I've already created a great question layout in another course, I can just copy and paste it in here. We've got screen templates, these predefined layouts. Again, if you're new to creating e-learning content, it's a great way to get you running up and running quickly. I'm going to add in a blank screen. I add in my question text, drop it in there. And now this is the question stem, so I could come up with a question like, where is Gomo's HQ? There's my question stem. Now I choose how the learner's going to answer the question. So I look on the left at all my different types of questions. I'm going to say this is quite a simple question type. There's only one right answer, so I just drag and drop in my multiple choice. Again, Gomo's already given us 3 things to get us going. We can change that. We can add in other options. I can choose how many attempts the learner's going to get. Are they allowed? If they get it wrong, can they have another go? I'll say, yeah, I'm going to give them 2 attempts. I can change the feedback that they get. So you just very quickly build up your content. And I could then add in more questions. If this was a formal assessment, I can just add in more questions, then a results screen. I could be setting up question banks, so I can be pulling in questions at random for different subject areas so that I get a randomized set of questions. And now when I'm ready to have a look at that, I can just simply preview from the point in the course where I've been editing, and it will just apply that theme, so it will all be perfectly styled. So here we go. I've got my text changed. I've got my video. There's my little clip of Brighton here on the south coast of England. We can add in transcript and captioning for accessibility. If I move on here, we'll just move to our question screen. So here's our question. If I get it wrong the first time, I'd said, you're allowed another attempt. There's my try again message. Reset that. And if I get that right, tells me I've got it right. I'd get the point for that if this was an assessment, and I could move on to the next question. So that's how you build the content. And then when you come to publish that, I could choose to share that to a wider group of stakeholders, maybe people who don't have a Gomo login into your account. Just get that link, email that out to them. They can click on that, see it live from your account. They can send back their comments to you. And then you're ready to publish. And then you simply choose publish. And here I could, if I just have Gomo authoring, I just choose the standards that my particular learning platform works to, publish. That's ready to upload to your learning platform. And that's how you'd actually get going really quickly in terms of Gomo content. But Nick, I think I've talked enough there. So let me hand back to you to carry on.
So I think that was excellent. I think there are a lot of features there that Hugh's demonstrated, and actually to get started, I'm not sure you're going to need nearly any of them, to be honest. You can get started really quickly just using a few simple things and doing them nicely. I just wanted to come to a couple of questions that have come in via the chat. So one is, are there any cases where e-learning has its drawbacks? So there's two things I think to mention here. So one is the question of engagement, and this is with all learning. You know, people will only learn from something if they're properly engaging and paying attention to it. And that's the same in your classroom as it is with an online learning course. And so you've got to kind of make a bit of effort to engage with them. I guess the drawback that's harder to address is something I alluded to earlier, which is that you've got to preempt things, and e-learning can't respond back to the learner if they're not sure. So as the person creating the e-learning, you've got quite a responsibility to really get into the shoes of the learner and make sure that you've covered the points that they're going to need to access that learning. And sometimes you use other features as well. So sometimes you might use like a glossary feature, which Gomo has. So if there is a term, you know, that they need more support with, they could look it up in the glossary. So there are some drawbacks with e-learning, which are kind of obvious and hard to prevent. But in many ways, e-learning works much better than other formats, just because of how it is and how the standards were written. And some really nice things that just come out of the box. So if you're using SCORM, then everything is automatically bookmarked. So people will work their way through their e-learning. If they decide to exit it and then they come back later, the bookmark function takes them back to exactly where they were last in the e-learning. So there's lots of really quite nice features that have meant that this format has endured for a good long while, and it's still going. It's still probably our main way of delivering online learning. There was a question, says for Hugh, is it possible to add a feature to export the course content to a device's memory? So the one thing that comes up is this, can the e-learning be done offline? And that is a thing that kind of re-emerged. We used to do CD-ROMs back in the day. And then when mobile came in, it kind of re-emerged because mobile networks obviously weren't great for streaming whole courses. The problem has largely been solved on the side of the LMSs, actually. So most of the big LMSs that these courses might sit on have an offline player app component that lets you download the content and play it from there. And there are other ways that I probably haven't got time to go into. There's one just come in. Is there a way to share your module content with an SME to review? Yeah, so that's Hugh was showing that exact feature, and I think he's about to do it again on the screen. So there's this share link feature. So you get a link, and that link takes you to the preview of the course hosted in Gomo Authoring. You'll have seen on his preview screen there, it gives them a little warning because it's not the way to publish your course to the masses, it's a review link. So you get that little screen saying this is a review copy of the course. So yeah, that's really simple and easy to preview a course, and it's always live, so they can see you know, the current state of the course. There's not, you don't end up with version problems or anything like that. I'm going to do a cheeky, here's one I made earlier, just to set expectations. It's probably not what you'd be able to do at your first go. I obviously sit in an office full of graphic designers and developers. But one of the things that I do want to say is that it's simple. It's a simple pattern that we use again and again on, you know, a lot of e-learning courses. We don't always try and reinvent the wheel and create horrendously complicated structures. We try and do the simple things and do them nicely. So here's a title screen with an enter button, and then you can come in and you come to a menu screen, and it sets out each of the topics that we were going to look at, and our final topic is an assessment. And these are, you know, this is a very common pattern. You know, 99% of e-learning courses are going to be pretty similar to this in terms of experience. And then when we go through, it's just nice, simple presentation. Yeah, there's nothing nothing amazingly special here that you wouldn't be able to do yourself. You know, we get a lot of our images from stock libraries, which you can access equally easily. Or I know many companies have brand departments and image libraries that you can access that way. You know, interactions tend to be quite simple still. So a lot of what we do in terms of learning is we chunk the content. So, you know, we find things that would go under headings and we make an interaction. And a lot of that is just about, you know, making sure there's not overload on the screen. So we want to show a nice amount of content at each step. We're not trying to make sure that we're never presenting our learners with a big long essay. Always nice bite-sized chunks, presented simply, and always aiming for a kind of a conversational style, a friendly approach to how we you know, speak to the learner. But there's nothing too complicated about how we do that, and it's certainly something that you can find your way through. So I made a quick list of do's and don'ts that I thought would work for people who are really new to putting together an e-learning course. I just thought we'd step through these. So my first do is to make things look smart. So one of the things that can really backfire in an e-learning course is any kind of sloppiness. I think you've got to make sure that you've proofread your work, that it all makes sense, because people, for some reason, with the written word, they're much less forgiving than they are when people are speaking. So you've got to make sure you've got a level of smartness there. But don't overthink things, and don't try and over design every screen. You know, text screens are absolutely fine. The main thing is just to focus on having good, clear language that you're going to be using. So one of our rules of thumb is to use our layouts consistently. So we have like, and these are almost rules from print publishing, but you know, a 50-50 column layout is usually going to look nice, and equal thirds is usually going to look nice. But if you start kind of adjusting your columns so that text fits on one particular screen, that's when things go a bit awry. Or having a different layout for every single screen in your course. It can also just lose its cohesiveness and look a little less professional. Whereas if you just have, you know, 2 or 3 kind of core layouts of how you're going to set out your screen, it creates a much more professional effect. But I will say don't be monotonous. So try and mix it up. Don't have a text screen and then another screen of text and then another screen of text. See if you can find an opportunity to put some interaction in there, to chunk that content and organize it logically for the learner, to maybe use some media, find a video to put in on a screen, just to break it up and make it an interesting experience. Use friendly and conversational language. We do an awful lot of learning that is, you know, taking a policy and trying to explain it to the learner. And the thing that you find is the policy is great source content. It's nice and accurate and clear, but it's often not that friendly. You know, it hasn't been written from the perspective of how is a learner going to absorb this and take this on board. So we always aim for a friendly conversational tone, like thinking about how we would say it and then making it slightly more formal because it's the written word. And that tends to hit the mark. And my final tip, because I don't want to overload you, is to not overload your learners. So there's a thing that we call wall of text, which is where somebody has all their content, they just dump it onto the screen, and effectively they're giving the learners an essay to read. And I think if you do want your learners to read an essay, then the there are better formats for that. You could put it in a PDF and share it that way, or host it on an intranet page. E-learning really is for breaking content down and making it more easy to access and work your way through. So e-learning is not the format if you really want them to just sit and read something for an hour. I think that in that case, you'd be better to distribute PDFs and reading material and say, read this. But that, of course, is only going to work if you've got material that people are going to be prepared to work their way through and engage with. And often we're dealing with topics that people are less likely to pull on and engage with for its own sake. Great. I'm going to go back to Hugh. We're nearing the end now, but very briefly, Hugh, do you want to talk through some ways to get training to your staff?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yes, just as we finish here and really pointing towards the other webinars we're going to be running over the subsequent weeks, that want to have just to get you thinking about, you've created this great content about how you're going to actually get that out to your staff, to your learners, wherever they might be. And the main thing here, I'd say, is that you're going to need standards. Nick's already mentioned about the SCORM 1.2 standard and so forth. These standards are going to be the way that you can take your content and get it running with whatever you've got in that learning ecosystem that I mentioned earlier. So get familiar with all these things like SCORM 1.2, 2004, XAPI, and so forth, and make sure that the tools that you're choosing support these standards, because you're going to need all of your tools and all of your platforms to be helping you with this, with the standards. And it's surprising how many of even some of the newer platforms don't actually support these standards. So watch out when you're doing your research. And then you need to have a look at the actual tools. Now, within LTG, we've seen that we've got the People Fluent LMS, really powerful. We have the Instilled Learning Experience platform. Recently, OpenLMS have come on board, the latest family member. And we've also got Gomo Delivery, which really makes it easy to be able to take the Gomo content, the kind of courses that I showed earlier, and then to be able to deliver that with your existing ecosystem. And you need to think about what you need from the platform. Do you need absolutely everything like classroom bookings, social features, learner cohorts, and so forth? Or do you just need a quick and easy way to get your learning out to a small group of learners? Also, what do you need to track, score, and analyze? Do you need to look at the whole area of XAPI and all the great things that can do in terms of tracking and analysis? And we'll be having a look at precisely that area in our fourth webinar in the series. So those are some of the things for you to begin to think about in terms of delivering the content. So just to wrap up here, so this has been the first of 4 webinars that we're running about the how-to webinar series for a home-based workforce. So we've been looking at actually moving the training online and the things you need to consider and how quickly you can do that. And that recording will be made available, and you'll be getting an email with that. Then next week, we're going to go on to address the home working training challenges. Then we're moving on to some tips about creating great e-learning content, some of those things that Nick's begun to share with us. And then we'll be having a look at this whole area about analysis and tracking and improving through analysis. And you'll be able to find, you'll be able to register with those in the link that you can see on the screen here. And also, I think that's going to be put in the chat as well. Yes, thank you, Lindsay. There we go. If you look in the chat panel in GoToWebinar, you'll find it there. Also, I should point out that if you like what you see with Gomo that I was showing earlier, then you can actually choose to sign up for a free trial. You can go to our website, www.gomolearning.com, click on the try it for free, and that's the full product available for 21 days. Also, if you have any queries, you'll see the contact us button here, and we'd be very happy to help you. So finally, we'll just see whether we have any last minute questions here. I know that we've been answering the questions as we go along. I can't see any further ones coming in there.
There was one further one there after we talked about the share link saying, can you enter comments? There's a long answer to that one. Not on that share link, but there's another Gomo feature where people log in and then they can leave comments. I think that's says it quickly enough. I'd just like to add that obviously this is predominantly about Gomo, but if you're interested in somebody who can create the e-learning for you, then do get in touch with Leo. And if you don't want any of that hassle and you want pre-made learning, our sister company Uclea have a library of pre-made courses, one of which you saw briefly earlier. So you can also get in touch with us about that.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you for your input. That's been really interesting. And thank you all for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Hope that you'll be able to tune in to our other subsequent webinars as well. So once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a follow-up email with the webinar recording and also our contact details in case you have any other questions. Apologies if you've asked a question and we haven't had time to answer that. We will try and follow that up after this webinar. So thank you for joining us both at Gomo and Leo today, and have a great rest of your day.